debate. The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Thank you. Today's motion is about putting people first. It's about Canadians. It's about seeing them, it's about hearing them, it's about making sure that they are understood. It's about doing no harm. That's what today's debate is all about. Madam Speaker, I am advocating for Canadians, and this should not be something that is controversial or that causes disgraceful comments to be made within this place from the opposite side, but somehow it is. The last several months have left Canadians absolutely dumbfounded at the federal government's lack of care, lack of concern, and lack of compassion toward them. As food prices have continued to rise astronomically due to inflation, as energy costs have put people in detrimental places, the Trudeau government, or Mr. Trudeau's government, the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister is choosing to increase the cost of living for Canadians through one policy implementation after another. During question period today, my Conservative colleagues and I have asked this government to demonstrate a little bit of compassion and to stop their planned tax hikes. They responded with obscure studies and statistics telling us that actually, no, you got it all wrong. Canadians are actually better off. They're getting ahead. As if to say the government knows best. What Canadians are feeling is illegitimate. How demeaning, how heartless. I have heard many of my constituents share their stories with me and post other stories online that tell me that they are struggling, they are hopeless, and many of them are in despair. I'm talking about a senior who recently came into my constituency office in Lethbridge, and she shared with me that she lives in a mobile home and she's having a hard time making ends meet. Normally she would go to her neighbor or maybe her son in order to get assistance, but the reality is they're in the same boat. I'm talking about another couple that came into my office and lost their home because they couldn't make their mortgage renewal due to inflation. And now they're living in an RV in their parents' backyard. She's struggling immensely with mental health issues. I'm talking about an elderly man from Medicine Hat, Alberta, who several weeks ago submitted his application for medical assistance in dying because he can't afford to pay for medication and food and shelter, and so he's made a choice to end his life. In a public statement, this man, who lives with a physical disability, said, quote, "I don't want to die. I simply can't afford to live." These are the kinds of stories that are transpiring from coast to coast. This is not the Canada that these folks deserve. A recent report revealed that almost a quarter of Canadians are having to cut back on the food that they eat or the groceries they buy because they just simply can't afford it. Meanwhile, the number of people accessing food banks and the children going to sleep hungry at night is drastically increasing. We are a country that feeds the world. There is no need for this. But there are ramifications for just inflation. And these ramifications...
That's not a point of order.
It is a point of order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Chair has ruled repeatedly that the term that the member just used is not appropriate because it is doing indirectly what you are not allowed to do directly. Perhaps you could remind this member of that and she could retract her comment.
Agreed, and I would strongly suggest that the member use another term. Thank you.
More and more Canadians are struggling to get by because their dollars are less and less valued due to inflation. Many charities, let's talk about them for a moment, have filled the gaps that we have had in this country. But because Canadians are so hard done by right now, they don't even have enough left at the end of the month to be able to donate where they normally would, which then is leaving this increased gap in terms of social services and the ability to be able to care for one another. That's shameful. So we have this affordability crisis that is actually destroying people's lives. But the government, they can play a role. They can, if they choose. It's simple. They need to axe the tax, they need to stop their out-of-control spending, and they need to be a responsible government that brings in investment rather than pushing it out.
You're here.
And there are other things too. We have an opportunity, you see. in the realm of agriculture. We are incredible at producing food. We literally feed the world. My riding of Lethbridge does this incredibly well. The bounty that comes from there should be celebrated. But instead, we have a government that wants to put policies in place that are actually going to reduce crop yield. We have a government that wants to punish our farmers, our producers, those that bring life, rather than celebrate them, rather than give them credit for the incredible superpower they hold. There's another superpower too, energy. We have the 3rd largest oil reserve in the world, and we are the 5th largest producer of natural gas. Just like food, the world needs energy. It's what keeps us going. And Canada has the potential to be the solution to the world's needs in this regard. We could be stepping up and taking our place on the world stage, but instead we are shrinking back. We could displace the reliance that is currently in existence with regard to regimes that we should not be supporting, but instead we continue. We have an opportunity to be the answer to Europe's need for LNG, as the Chancellor of Germany asked us to be. But the Prime Minister responded by saying, there's no business case. There's no business case? Of course there's a business case. There's people in need of energy. We have energy. Figure out the infrastructure. Make it happen. It simply takes political will.
Here, here.
Here, here.
The NDP and the Liberals, they love to rail against profitable organizations. But in their attempt to foster an environment of hostility, in an attempt to demonize those that would generate wealth, they forget about a few facts. That actually in the generation of wealth, jobs are created. In the generation of wealth, taxes are paid. And ultimately, those taxes come full circle and actually help support the very social programs that we value. You see, it's crucial to understand that without the generation of wealth, there is no safety net for those in need. Let me say that again. Without the generation of wealth, there is no safety net for those in need. So instead of demonizing the businesses that are producing jobs and generating wealth and helping our country do well, let's celebrate them. I'm confident that if we can get government out of the way and provide the freedom for Canadians to reach their greatest potential, that our nation will not only thrive, but actually that we could be a leader among nations. It just takes a little bit of political will. We have the opportunity to foster an environment of entrepreneurship, to remove unnecessary boundaries or red tape, to scrap excess taxation, and to draw investment into our country. That's what we're calling on this government for. Yesterday, we gave the folks opposite an opportunity to vote with Conservatives and for Canadians. We asked them to do this by halting their plan to triple the carbon tax. Sadly, they chose themselves instead of the Canadian people. So today, we're giving them another opportunity to stand with Canadians. Millions of them. Millions of Canadians are struggling to get by. Millions of Canadians are struggling to feed their families, to pay their rent, to afford their mortgages, to fuel their cars. That's real. The folks across the way can pull out whatever sort of charts and graphs and quote-unquote stats they want. It's not going to convince Canadians that somehow they're better off just because the Liberals told them so. Canadians know the reality. They feel the reality day in and day out when they have to make hard choices as to where they spend their last dollar. In the midst of an affordability crisis, we're calling on the government today to stop their planned tax increases on the paychecks of Canadians so that they can keep more of the money they earn. Canadians and Conservatives are hoping that the government will finally demonstrate some compassion, that they will do the right thing, and that they will vote in favor of this motion today. Because it is time to give Canadians back the control of their lives that they always should have had. Because the potential is within the people. The future of this country is within the people. They are the problem solvers. They are the solution makers. They are the wealth generators. They are the ones that are going to take us toward a prosperous future. They are the ones that deserve for the government to get out of the way and to be able to move forward in the direction that they wish to go.
Hear,